What's up, everybody? I'm Taijutsu, and today we're going to talk about one of the most hotly debated topics in all of edged weapon martial arts, possibly even as hotly debated as what style of knife fighting is best, is what kind of knife is best for fighting. Now, personally, I prefer something that looks like this, okay? Straight, spear tip, and double-edged with a blade guard and a handle that's at least 5.5 inches long. And that gets confusing for people who see my content, because I still call what I do Tanto Jutsu, but they see us training with knives like this, and they think, well, that doesn't really look like a Tanto. Most Tantos they've ever seen just look like mini katana. And it is true that most Tantos you're going to see on the internet or in movies are going to look like mini katana, because that's what they looked like for most of Japanese history before the Sengoku period or the Warring States period, basically the golden age of what we now think of as samurai warfare, and also after World War II when most new Tantos that were being forged were either ceremonial or decorative. And because Tantos were made using the same process as longer swords, they were optimized for cutting. Now, there are several reasons why this might be useful. First off, they often doubled as tools on the battlefield for doing things other than killing people. For instance, if you had to quickly cut away a piece of your armor in order to tend to a wound or something like that, you would use your Tanto for that. It was easier to get the precise cuts that you needed. Also, it was used in the first phase of the ritual suicide to disembowel yourself. So obviously, that's going to be unpleasant at the best of times, but having an optimized cutting tool that gets the job done faster might make it a bit less horrible. And also, they just look prettier. When you see the blending of the harder and softer metals creating this beautiful Hammond sort of wave pattern on the blade, it's very aesthetically pleasing. So any decorative or ceremonial blade would be expected to have a really sort of pronounced, beautiful Hammond on it. Another big contributing factor would be overlapping skill development. Most Kenjutsu styles were built on a foundation using the longer swords like the katana, and then they would just have wakizashi and tanto techniques within that style of Kenjutsu that were utilizing the same sort of basic skills that you would master using the katana. It was pretty rare for somebody to have a completely different, separate approach to the knife versus the sword like I do. Many would probably consider it sacrilegious. But during the Sengoku period, everything was really chaotic. War was breaking out everywhere, peasant uprisings and revolutions were breaking out everywhere, and things on the battlefield had changed significantly, but things like assassinations and urban combat and close-quarter combat were also becoming daily occurrences in a way that they hadn't really before. And you see that in the development of the Tanto, and the advent of what were called Moroha Tanto, which it basically just means double-edged. So they actually started to be a lot less curved, usually longer. Some of them even had spear tips, although they might be curved slightly. They would have two edges, a full tang, a blade guard, and a longer handle. So they were much more specialized for fighting and a lot less useful as common tools. This is my personal favorite fighting knife. It's called a Honshu Midnight Fighter 1, and it's a modern interpretation of what one of these might have looked like. And to me, it's the perfect fighting blade. Long, spear-tipped, double-edged, blade guard, and about a 6-inch handle. Now, there are several reasons why I think this design is superior for fighting, and it starts with how the blades are made. See, it makes sense for a full-size katana like this to have a specialized cutting surface where you have a softer metal for shock absorption, a curved long blade, and then a single edge. Because the length and weight and curve of the katana make it extremely powerful as a cutting weapon. When you're learning Kenjutsu, essentially what you're learning is how to officially make the weight of the blade work for you when you're cutting, and not have it work against you too much when you're defending or preparing to cut. When you're using something this size, that's just not the case. It doesn't have the length or weight to have that inherent advantage in cutting power. This only cuts as fast as you can physically move it, and I don't think it makes that much of a difference having a one-sided specialized cutting surface versus having two edges. The second reason is that, with very few exceptions like the neck, most of the traumatic, fight-ending, functionally limiting damage you're going to do with a knife is from thrusting and stabbing. If you can thrust or stab, you should be thrusting and stabbing. You shouldn't be cutting. Because you could cut fingers or wrists to try to make them drop the knife. You could cut anywhere as a distraction or a setup for something else. But if I'm going to specialize a knife for killing a human being, it's way better to specialize it for cutting and thrusting. Have the blade longer, have it straighter, and have two edges on either side so that there's less resistance stabbing in and there's less resistance pulling the knife out so that you can stab again. Third major reason, and this is also why I like a longer handle, is that if I'm going to switch hands or switch grips, I want to be able to go from cut to cut in either hand, in either grip. so that no matter how I'm holding the knife, the same techniques are always available to me. If I'm basing my fighting style around cutting and I can only cut with one side, if I switch grips, if I switch hands, if I drop my knife and then pick it back up, now I have to have the wherewithal to know which side of the knife is facing out. And that can cost me precious time in the middle of a knife fight. So to recap, lots of people like lots of different knives for lots of different reasons, but I think when it comes to a weapon, you can't get better than this. And even though most Japanese knives look a lot like mini katana, it's not unprecedented to see knives like this in Japanese history, particularly during the Sengoku period, when it was the most important it's ever been in Japanese history for knives to be better weapons and not as good of tools, especially when it came to things like armor piercing.